Hi there, it's Lara back with your weekly astrology forecast. So this one is for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, all the way through to May 26th and beyond. As I, often say, when we're talking about the events that are happening, even though the event is happening on a certain day, the astrological event, it usually trickles out, right, on either side. So we feel that energy leading up to it and then after the fact. And when we're talking about moon cycles, in this case, we're going to be talking about the new moon in Gemini that's happening on the 22nd on Friday. The new moon lasts, those energies grow until the point of the full moon that happens 2 weeks after. But that's the smaller cycle. Then they also go to the next new moon, right? The following month. So in about 4 weeks' time. But they also relate to both the full moon in that same sign, 6 months away, and the next new moon that will happen a year from now. So you see, it's cycles within cycles within cycles, right? But that's how astrology works. But in this video, we're going to be talking mostly about the new moon in Gemini that's coming up on Friday. But before I get there, I'll let you know that the moon is currently in Taurus. She moved in there yesterday, and I was posting on Facebook about how my daughter, who happens to be a Taurus moon, she's been baking up a storm since, she hasn't been going to school. I mean, they've been doing online school, but she's been honing her baking skills, which is very Taurus. And, it's been getting better and better, and I'm getting well acquainted with stretchy pants because of this. Well, not only because of that, but, sampling her creations. But it's a good time when the moon is in Taurus to get in the kitchen, make something yummy, do something that connects you with your senses. Taurus is all about the sensual, the world of the five senses, getting out in nature, doing some gardening, anything that really indulges your senses. And Taurus is also about our stability in the material world, right? And so it can be a good time to go over finances and get those kinds of practical matters taken care of as well. So that's what's going on with the moon for the next couple of days. The moon really likes to be in Taurus, incidentally. So, depending on what other aspects are going on, it's usually a nice energy. Of course, that all depends on you as an individual and how you respond to that too, right? It depends on your own chart and how you respond to the energies in terms of where the moon's at. I like a Taurus moon. I'm a Virgo rising, so that works nicely. I have a lot of water in my chart. That works nicely together. But, if you're somebody that has a lot of fire in your chart, for example, a Taurus moon may feel a little bit too slow for you. And if you want to know more about how this works and to learn more about working with the cycles of the moon and what the moon in the signs lends well to, right? And how you respond. Like when you start keeping track of where the moon is at, you get a sense of how you're responding to that. And you can know, there's, the moon is moving through Aries for the next couple of days. I know, historically speaking, because I've been keeping track, that when the moon is in Aries, I get a little bit agitated and irritated. Speaking from experience here, I have a lot of planets in Aries and some tricky stuff going on there. And so I do find that when the moon moves through Aries, I have to be a little bit conscious of that. And I can be a little bit fired up, and I can get angry and riled up. So I noticed that about myself. But if you're interested in learning more about that kind of thing, then I have a freebie over on my website for you called A Guide to Working with the Moon. And it's just a short audio and an accompanying PDF, and you can grab it at the link below. So on Friday, the moon's going to move into Gemini, and that's when we're going to have the new moon that we're going to talk about at length here in a minute. And then she will move out of Gemini on Sunday and move into Cancer, when we may want to really focus on home and our emotional security, and kind of closing the doors and that kind of thing, after what may be quite a busy couple of days with the moon in Gemini. So what else do I want to tell you? Oh, the sun is joining the party in Gemini today. So that's lending to the Gemini energy. I'm going to show you the chart shortly so you can see the big pileup of energy in Gemini. And so our focus collectively, the sun is going to be shining its light in the Gemini area of the sky, and therefore in whatever house Gemini sits for us individually, right, in our individual charts. But we're moving away from this sort of earthy, grounded, stable Taurus energy into the more mutable air energy of Gemini, right? Taurus is a fixed earth sign. We've been doing a lot of gardening over this Taurus season, for example, and taking care of some practical things like, switching our internet provider and cutting down on some things that we don't really need, to save a bit of money during this time, and things that it should have been done anyways a long time ago, but we didn't really have the opportunity. And over the Taurus season, we've been able to take care of a lot of those practical things. And now that the sun is going to move into Gemini, the focus will be more on the pace will pick up. Let's put it that way, right? It'll be more information, more communication, more curiosity, maybe more socializing if we're lucky, who knows, or maybe that'll be more online socializing. Gemini is connected to the internet and technology and that kind of thing. We may find our energies a bit more scattered when the sun is in Gemini. So that's what's going on there. And I think we'll spend the rest of the time talking about the new moon, because I have a lot to say about that, and I want to take you through, all the signs and let you know where this is happening for you. I'm going to show you the chart right now before I go any further and forget. So here's the chart for the new moon, which is happening Friday, May 22nd at 1:38 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're elsewhere, you can check your time zone for that. Like if you're way down in the southern hemisphere, then you will be experiencing this actually early in the morning on the Saturday, the 23rd. But the rest of us, it will be on the 22nd at some point. So, and it's happening at 2 degrees of Gemini. So let's draw your attention right here. Here is Gemini. You look at all of the stuff that's going on there. Remember a while back when all of the energy was piled up in Capricorn? And we still do have a lot going on in that sort of area of the chart. It's easing into Aquarius now, but it kind of looked like this. And now all this energy is in Gemini here, where we have, oh my goodness, such a pileup. We've got, so most importantly, in terms of what I'm talking about in this video, we've got the sun and the moon there at 2 degrees of Gemini, right? New moon is always when the sun and the moon come together in the sky to birth something new. And then we also have Venus there, and Venus is exactly conjunct Mercury at the time of this new moon, right? They're both at 20 degrees Gemini. We have asteroid Vesta just a little further off at 24 Gemini. I talked about her in last week's video if you're interested. And then we've got the North Node, of course, in Gemini that's just moved into Gemini and is right at 29 degrees because the North Node always moves backward, right? The nodes of the moon, north and south, they move in retrograde. And then speaking of retrograde, Venus, of course, is retrograde. at the time of this new moon and will be for quite a while. I did a video on that. I've actually done 2 videos on the Venus retrograde. One was last week, so you can have a listen to that if you're wanting to know more, because that's something that is impacting us for a while to come, right? So, and then the other thing I want to draw your attention to is you can see Neptune in Pisces here at 20 degrees. And as I mentioned to you, Venus and Mercury are conjunct at 20 degrees of Gemini. Gemini and Pisces are mutable signs. They square each other. Okay, you can see this. So, and Neptune is exactly squaring Mercury, Venus during the time of this new moon. So we're going to talk about what that means in this video. And then lastly, I will draw your attention to, here we have Jupiter and Pluto still in Capricorn, right? And we have Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto are both retrograde. Spoke about that, I think, last week as well. There's Saturn also retrograde in Aquarius now. It will move back into Capricorn for a bit. But it's at 1 degree Aquarius, right beside asteroid Pallas, Athena, who is at 0 degrees Aquarius. And Saturn and Pallas, Athena are making a trine to this new moon, right? Within sort of 1 to 2 degrees of the new moon. So that is a supportive aspect. And we're going to talk about what that means. All right. So that's the chart. And so you can see, right, there is a big pileup of energy in Gemini. And we call that, in sort of astro speak, a stellium. Some people say when there's 3 or more planets, some astrologers say 4 or more planets, but either way that qualifies, because we have, what did I say here? Well, including the North Node and including asteroid Vesta, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's, more than a stellium. We have a big pileup of energy, so real concentration of energy in Gemini. And this Gemini energy, so much Gemini can feel a little sort of ants in our pants, which can be hard right now in the current situation, because depending where you are in the world, most of us are still sort of, in lockdown. Restrictions are easing up a little bit in some places. Some people are taking that to mean it's business as usual. I know here in Ontario where I live, they, we've sort of gone with phase 1, and a few restrictions have been lifted, but people are kind of, they're giving an inch and some people are taking a mile kind of thing. So we'll see what happens there, what that leads to. And the astrology is cautioning us not to push it too far, too fast, because that might come back to bite us in the ass later on, if we choose to do that. So, but it can feel quite hectic, especially when we're in this, sort of confinement right now. And we may be trying to get our socializing in any way we can, right? Whether that, where I am, the weather's getting nicer, so it's easier to kind of have a social distance visit with a friend. I did that with somebody I hadn't seen, a good friend of mine I haven't seen in a long time, and we sat in her backyard at a distance, had a chat for a bit the other day. So that was nice. So those kinds of things, now that the weather's nicer, but also more online communications. I've been doing a lot more of that lately. We have a local astrology group here that we're running a trivia session, a trivia game online on Saturday. It was supposed to be in person, but we're doing it via Zoom. And then the NORWAC conference is coming up this weekend. And normally this is a conference that takes place, in person, but in the Northwest, but it's now they've taken it online, and that's a big endeavor. And so the good thing about that is people that would not normally be able to participate because, the travel is expensive, it's long distance, all of that. Now more people can participate who wouldn't otherwise have been able to. So, all kinds of those things are going on. And so we're getting our socializing in that way. When I think of, Gemini energy, an image that comes to mind is sort of like, a busy airport where people are coming and going and, checking the flight schedule, and things are changing, and things are happening at the different terminals. And it's just like, or think about, like, I use the phrase ants in your pants, but think about ants when you see ants that are just, you see like an anthill, and the ants are scurrying all over the place, and you don't know where they're going, and they're gathering this there, and, taking this information there, and gathering this piece there, and back and forth and back and forth. That's very Gemini. And so when we've got the sun and the moon coming together, it's a new moon. So it is a time, all new moons in some way are a time for a fresh start, starting something new, a new beginning. And so that's the case with this new moon. But because there's so many planets in retrograde, this can be a revisiting of something that was already started before. It can be, people coming back into your experience, and it's almost like taking something that's already in play and doing it a new way, or a fresh start happening in that regard. And with Mercury and Venus, as I showed you, exactly conjunct and squaring Neptune, it can feel maybe a bit tricky to weed through all the information, right? And it can just be like unclear. Like we can be misled, or we can be misleading in our communications. And that's not necessarily intentionally. It can be, but it's not necessarily intentionally. It's just that there's so much coming and going, and so much coming at us, that it can be hard to navigate that, right? And if we're learning new technology, for example, sometimes things get lost in translation. Like texting somebody's not the same as having a face-to-face conversation. So it can be tricky that way. And with Neptune in a square here too, we can get information that may seem too good to be true. And so we want to be mindful of that, and we want to not move too quickly. Watch your communications, clarify if you're not certain, make sure the other person's understanding you. Don't make snap judgments based on the first thing that you hear or read, kind of thing either. But the good news is that, as I showed you on the chart, the new moon is in a trine to Saturn and Pallas Athena that are sitting in the early degrees of Aquarius. And the interesting thing about this, so this has a very stabilizing effect, right? Where Gemini's like all over the place, and we're gathering all the puzzle pieces and trying to fit them together. And does this fit here? And to make the big picture, right? It's like one of those giant puzzles that all the pieces look the same, and you're trying to weed through them and, find the right spot for them. And Saturn has this sort of stabilizing effect, Saturn and Pallas in a trine, which is a harmonious conversation. It's a conversation of ease and flow. It's supportive. And so that can really help in this situation and have a stabilizing effect. But the other thing is a long-lasting effect. So whatever new things that are starting now at this new moon can be things that last for a long time. They may take a long time to get off the ground, or to build, or to collect all those pieces and find the right, make the right picture. But they are sustainable and long lasting and solid with Saturn there. So, and the other thing I want to say, what I was starting to say to you, is this is interesting because Saturn and Jupiter are going to meet up in the sky in December around the solstice in what's called the Great Conjunction, right? And astrologers have been talking about this for a long time. These conjunctions between Saturn and Jupiter tend to be connected to significant events. And so with Saturn and Pallas in the spot in the sky that Saturn and Jupiter are going to meet up in later in December, this is like whatever we're beginning now is kind of, it's leading there, right? It's leading, we may get like a boost to that. It may finally kind of expand or get off the ground by December. And I know that seems like a long time away, but this is not a process that's going to happen overnight. And things that last generally take a while, right? They take a while to lay the foundations. And so, but it's interesting that I think this new moon is kind of giving us some clues as to where we're headed and what we are ultimately trying to get off the ground and create. And we may get a better idea of that later on in the year, closer to the end of the year. So I want to say a word about Pallas. Well, before I say that, I want to say, so just to finish my thought there, it's important to be mindful of where you're putting your focus right now, because ultimately, we're creating something. Each of us is creating something. And as a collective, we're creating something right now. We're gathering all this information, right? Gemini, to create something, to lay the foundation, gathering all the puzzle pieces to make the puzzle. But we have to kind of know what it is we want to create. And that can be difficult because Neptune is squaring, Mercury and Venus, and all this retrograde energy. And so it can kind of be like hard to get a clear picture. So don't rush it, but be mindful that you're not focusing on things you don't want at this time. We're in a time of huge flux. I was having a conversation with a good friend yesterday, and I used that word, and transition. There's a lot of mutable energy right now. Gemini is a mutable air sign. Pisces is a mutable water sign. So we are in that space between the cardinal and the fixed, this transition stage. We're in flux, right? And I think, some other astrologers may have used this analogy too, but it's very much like the professor in Back to the Future, but it's like this, whole notion of the flux capacitor, right? The object that allowed them to time travel. And that really is, it's about energy and motion. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's like, we're traveling. Mercury, in Gemini, its home sign it can travel between the worlds, right? Mercury can time travel. And so it's kind of like we're forward, backwards, sideways, gathering things all over the place, moving the energy. And it's like all the possibilities are available. What am I going to choose? So just be mindful what you choose. And to that, before I just say a word about Pallas and then go through the signs, I wanted to show you, when I was thinking about this, I don't often show you tarot cards anymore. When I first started doing these videos, I did that, but I'm sticking to the astrology these days. But I wanted to show you, I do readings for people though. And on that note, I've been really busy with readings. This last week, things have blown up, and I very much appreciate that. And, astrology is experiencing a bit of a rebirth, as we've been saying. Astrologers have been kind of knowing that this time was going to come for a little while now, but it seems to be happening. And the North Node has just moved into my 10th house. And so it was like when that happened, all of a sudden I'm getting busier and busier and busier with readings, which is awesome. And I really appreciate that. So on that note, if you're interested in getting a reading, you can reach me at my website at the link below. But I want to show you here. This card is the Seven of Cups. Okay, so just have a look. This is the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. And So the person on the card here is looking at all the options. Like all of these 7 cups have a different choice, a different symbol in them. And it's like, what should I choose? What should I choose, right? And so it's kind of like, this card came to mind when I was thinking about this, because it's kind of like, that's sort of where we're at. We have all these possibilities, all these choices, all this information. Where do we focus our attention? Because ultimately, what we focus our attention on now, and we, we start bringing that structure of Saturn to it, and that sort of slow putting all the pieces in place and doing the work of Saturn. Eventually, we make something solid. I have the 7 of Pentacles card here, right? Which is that practical earth energy. And so eventually we grow this, whatever this we're creating now, into something solid. And so we want to make sure that we make the right choice so that we grow what we want to grow, if that makes sense to you. So I wanted to let you know about that. But I also don't want you to think like, oh my gosh, make the right choice. She's freaking me out because I have so many things to think about. And what if I, like, it, take your time with it. There is opportunity here with Gemini for trying different hats on, for experimenting. But just understand that ultimately, we are working towards creating something new, and it's going to take a while. So make sure that whatever that is something that you want, right? What else do I want to say? Well, I thought it was important to bring Pallas into the equation here, because Pallas is, and I've talked about her before, she is like this Wonder Woman energy. I've used that analogy before. And I actually read an article. I can't remember the astrologer's name, Jessica. I think her site is called Moonkissed. And I came across an article that she wrote, and she actually uses that analogy, and she does a really good job of it too. But so it's like, this Pallas energy is all about creative problem solving and strategic vision. And Pallas is this capacity to see the connection between things, to see patterns, right? Pattern recognition. And so this, married with that Saturn energy, like, we've got an opportunity, and in a really supportive conversation with this new moon, we've got an opportunity here to really, really, use our creative thinking and our resourcefulness and our strategic, planning and all of that, to create something that can be really sustainable and beneficial and all of that, and to pay off Saturn in the long run. So I thought it was important to bring that in to the conversation. The last thing I'll say before I go through each of the signs is that we may see some increase in our ability to move around with all this Gemini energy, or at very least there's a desire for that. But people are getting restless, and there are, reopening plans going on in a lot of places. And so the key is to phase this in carefully, to be mindful, and again, like I said, to not rush it. Saturn is supporting us to do it the right way, right? If we do it the right way, then the chances of things working out to our benefit, or as best they can, are greater, right? So I think I could say so much more about Gemini and, all the things. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through each of the 12 signs, as I always do. And we're going first and foremost with rising sign in these general forecasts. So if you know your rising sign or your ascendant sign, those two words, those two phrases are equated. then listen to that first. And if you don't know that, that's okay. You can listen to your sun sign, obviously, your moon sign as well. And if you listen to all three, that sort of gives you, a fuller picture. But what I'm going to touch on here is the house that the Gemini new moon is falling in for you. So where's all this Gemini energy, and where is that fresh start available to you, most available to you? Like what area of life, right? Based on the house. If you know your own chart, of course, go by your chart, because this is a general forecast. Depending on the house system used to draw up the chart, it can differ slightly. But in a general forecast, here we're using, whole sign houses. And so you're going to listen to your rising sign, your sun, and your moon. And so I'll talk about the where the new moon is falling, like I said, and then the house that Saturn and Pallas are sitting in and trining, like lending you some support there, right? From to this new moon, to this new beginning, whatever it is for you. So let's get started. We're going to start with Gemini, because Gemini, this is happening in your first house. And I know if this is your first time here, you may be thinking, why isn't she starting with Aries? Because most people do. When you watch astrology forecasts, I know most astrologers start with Aries and they go through. I like to start with whatever house. I always start with the first house. So whatever sign this is impacting the first house in is where I start, and then I go through. And I find it's fair that way too, because it's not always like Aries isn't always first and Pisces last, right? So this is the way I do it. So we're starting with Gemini. Gemini, this is your new moon for the year. And so this is, a opportunity for a fresh new start. There's so much going on in your sign right now, Gemini. But you like a lot going on, right? You like variety, and you like to get a little bit of here and a little bit of there, and talk to this person and that person, and try this and try that, and all of that. And so, that this may be very welcome to you. And with the new moon in your first house, that's about a fresh start in terms of yourself. First house is the self. It's about perhaps a fresh start in terms of your body, maybe your sense of wellness and vitality, your physical vitality, maybe a fresh approach to how you present yourself to the world, or how you are perceived by the world as well, right? As first house. And so the sun and the moon coming together there are giving you an opportunity to start something new. And then you've got this trine from Saturn and Pallas Athena from your 9th house of foreign people and places, foreign travel, if that's an option, which really it isn't for most of us right now. But it can be armchair travel too, things you learn, right, from people and places that are different from you. It's about your philosophy and your worldview and your belief system. It's about learning things beyond the basics, right? And teaching, learning, publishing, these kinds of things. And so there is support there for you in terms of the new moon in your sign, Gemini. So that's for you. We're going to move to Taurus now, where we have the new moon happening in your 2nd house. So this is a fresh start, something new being birthed in relation to your personal resources. So your time, money, energy, right? Your values, your core values, what you value, and your sense of worth, self-worth in particular. And so that's, the new thing that is wanting to happen. And then you've got support from Saturn and Pallas Athena in your 10th house of career, of public reputation and persona, of your worldly ambitions, of the legacy you wish to leave, of your relationship to authority, these kinds of things. And so, like, in very real terms, this could be like you getting a raise at work, or you offering something and it boosting your status in some way. But those two areas of life are working together in harmony for this new moon. So that's for you, Taurus. And moving to Aries now, the new moon is birthing something new in your third house of your immediate environment. So your like community, the people and places closest to you. And oftentimes we think of this as people in our close vicinity, and that can be your neighbors, your community members, your teammates, your coworkers, your cousins, your siblings, that kind of thing. And this is also all about, third house is the natural house of Gemini. So it is about communication and gathering information. It's about commerce and technology. And it's also about learning and teaching, but it's like the basics, learning the basics, that sense of beginner's mind. And so that's where the new moon is happening for you, Aries. And then you're getting support from the 11th house, which is where Saturn and Pallas Athena are. And that 11th house is your hopes and dreams for the future, but it's the collective. It's the, your bigger tribe, organizations, friendship groups, clubs, associations, people that can help you reach your goals. And so there is some support happening there for you, from the 11th house to the third house at the time of this new moon. Next, we have Pisces. So Pisces, the new moon is a new beginning for you in the area of home, family, place of living, your sense of emotional security. It can have to do with real estate. It can have to do with your lineage. I usually associate it with, that mothering energy, so nurturing female figures kind of thing. So that's where the new moon is happening for you. And then you're getting support from the 12th house, which has to do with the unconscious. It has to do with your dreams. It has to do with your spiritual life and your spiritual and mental health. And it has to do with your connection to something larger than yourself. It can also very much have to do with endings, transitions, places that are literally, tucked away from the world. Just to give you a few examples, hospitals, spiritual retreat centers, rehabilitation facilities, these kinds of things, right? And so whatever's going on for you there, it's a supportive conversation between those two life areas in this, within the context of beginning something new. So that's you, Pisces. Next, we have Aquarius, where the new moon's happening in your 5th house. So for you, a new start in relation to your creative projects, your creative self-expression, what sparks joy for you, how you have fun and pleasure, children, your children, issues around children, all of these things. And then, so something new beginning there. And the support is coming from you literally like the self, the first house. So, your approach to things, or how you're perceived, or your sense of well-being and vitality, or physical kind of, even your physical appearance is first house. So these two areas are working in harmony at the time of the full moon. So that's what's going on for you, Aquarius. And next we have Capricorn, where the new moon is happening in your 6th house. So something new on offer here, or something, making something old new again kind of thing, is also possible in the area of your daily grind. So your daily work life, checking off the ticky boxes kind of thing. And this can be paid or unpaid work. And this can also have to do with health and wellness in some way. It can also have to do with, being in service in some way. It can have to do with relationships between unequals as well. But something new on offer there. And then you've got support from your 2nd house, which is your resources, right? That you possess, your time, your money, your energy, your material possessions, even what you value. your personal values, your sense of self-worth. Those two areas are working in harmony, and that second house is sort of lending support to the daily grind, right? Which is where the new moon is happening in the 6th. So that's for you, Capricorn. And next we've got Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, for you, the new moon is taking place in your 7th house of one-to-one relationships. And so something new or something old is new again there in the 7th house in terms of close personal relationships, significant others, close friends, family members, business partners, any kind of contractual obligations and agreements is 7th house as well. So something new on offer there. And then there's this support happening from the 3rd house, which is the house of communications, of your immediate environment. So people that are in your immediate environment, right? Maybe somebody you have a close personal relationship that lives close to you, kind of thing, or a family member, like a cousin or a sibling that lives with you or close to you. Or just about your communications, or learning something or teaching something new, that sort of beginner's mind is supporting this house of one-to-one relationships. So that's for you, Sagittarius. Next, we've got Scorpio, where the new moon is happening in your 8th house. So that's your home house, Scorpio. You're familiar with this energy. The 8th house is all about intimacy and what we share with others, how we are vulnerable. This can be in like a therapy setting, digging deep in the psyche, but it can also have to do with what we share in terms of our resources. So other people's time, money, energy, right? Resources that come to us through others, and how we kind of let our guard down and show our vulnerability. So there is a new opportunity here in some way, or something old is new again, and you're getting support from the house of home, family, place of living, emotional security, nurturing female figures, that sort of thing in the 4th house, because that's where Saturn and Pallas are sitting, and they are trining that new moon, which is happening in your 8th house. So that's for you. Next, we have Libra, where the new moon is in your 9th house, Libra. So whatever new thing is happening, or again, it's like something that was already in play, but then had to stop, is now new again. Something old is new again. In terms of your 9th house, of long distance travel, of foreign people and places, of your philosophy and belief system and your worldview, and, getting your message out to a wider audience, like publishing, teaching, learning, higher, this is like sort of learning beyond the basics as well. And so for you, this is where the new thing is happening, or the old new thing, or the new old thing is happening, Libra. And you're getting support from the 5th house. So this is children, or issues around children. This is your own creative self-expression. So your creative projects, how you shine your light out into the world. This is things that spark joy for you and bring you pleasure, right? So those two areas of the chart are working in harmony at the time of this full moon. So that's what's going on for you, or new moon, not full moon. That's what's going on for you, Libra. Next, we've got Virgo, where the new moon is playing out in your 10th house at the top of your chart, which is your public reputation and persona, the legacy you wish to leave, your career, your authority, and your relationship to authority. So the new moon has a fresh start for you there, or maybe something old is new again in relation to your career and those other themes I mentioned. And you've got support there from Saturn and Pallas Athena in your 6th house of your daily grind, your daily work habits, the tasks you do on the day-to-day, paid or unpaid, health and wellness factors in here, relationship between, unequals also factors in here. So those two areas of the chart are working in harmony at the time of the new moon for you, Virgo. Now we have Leo, where you've got the new moon happening in your 11th house. So this is something new on offer, or something old is new again, in terms of friendship groups, clubs, associations, just the collective in general, maybe humanitarian pursuits. This could have to do with, this speaks to, what you sort of hope for, your vision for the future, and the people that can help you get there. And so with the new moon there, something new on offer, but then you're getting support from the 7th house where Saturn and Pallas Athena are and that's your house of one-to-one close personal relationships and contracts and agreements as 7th house as well. So something in that area is lending you support to the new beginnings on offer in the 11th house. And then last but not least, we have Cancer in this case, where Cancer, the new moon's happening for you in your 12th house, right? Which is about your mental and spiritual health and your relationship to a higher power, whatever that means for you. It's about endings and closure and the unseen and, places behind closed doors and what you do in solitude. So something new beginning there, or something old is new again. And then you have support from the 8th house, which is all about other people's resources, other people's time, money, energy. It's about intimate connections and vulnerability and, the healing of our psyche as well in the 8th house. So that's supporting whatever new thing is on offer for you there in the 12th house. So hopefully that makes sense to all of you. And I hope you listen to the introduction because it's always where, the good stuff is. And, I have good feelings about this new moon. So I hope that the week goes well for you, and I will catch you here next Wednesday. And if not, before then on Facebook and on Instagram, and maybe on my mailing list if you're interested in connecting with me that way. Okay. Take good care, and I'll talk soon. Bye-bye.